First, this is my first ever YouTube video. I'm sorry if the quality is poor, but I hope I get the message across so you can learn all about the changes on board with P&O Cruises. The second disclaimer is this is all about my experience and what happened during my first staycation last week. Please do check the website fully for any changes to what's happened in the process. I cannot be held responsible for anything that happens differently to my own experience, but I hope that my story helps you to prepare yourself for joining on your next P&O cruise. It's Steve here, and if you've been following my cruise blog, the link of which I'll put at the bottom of this video for you, you'll know that on Thursday I returned from P&O's Britannia, that beautiful ship, for the first staycation cruise of P&O Cruises since operations restarted after the pandemic. And what a wonderful time I had, and thank you so much to everybody that took the time to read my blog. In this video I thought I would record this to really help people understand the process that you go through in relation to going on board. I had loads and loads of questions about what was going on in relation to the ship, what the testing was like, what the requirements was like. So I know that I've put some in my blog, but I thought a video would be really useful to be able to break some of that down for you. First of all, before you go anywhere, before you leave your house, obviously the regular things that you normally would be asked for is important: your passport and your e-ticket. And since they've changed the system very recently as well, you'll need to make sure you've sorted your boarding pass out. So you're asked to take a picture of yourselves or upload a picture onto the P&O system to declare your credit card or your debit card details, and then to print your boarding pass with you, ready for when you arrive at the dock. But of course, on these staycation cruises, what you also need is proof of vaccination. P&O are asking for you to have completed your course of vaccination. Don't forget to check their website for the specific requirements, because they've just released updated information for cruises after the start of July, all the way through to the end of 2021 now. So they are asking for you to have completed your vaccination course. That's if you're using a vaccination that requires 2 doses, or a vaccination that requires just a single dose for you to be fully covered. So whatever type of vaccination you use will depend on whether you need obviously a single dose or a double dose in order to be covered. So you need to make sure that you've got a proof of vaccination before you leave your house, and they're saying that it needs to be from a health authority. So if you've got access to the NHS app where you can download a PDF version of it, or you've got it on your phone, or you've got a letter from the NHS or a similar health authority, that is what you need. You also, 3 days before you travel, need to complete an online health declaration, which of course, as you probably expect, asks you lots of questions in relation to COVID and COVID symptoms and that sort of stuff, and whether you've isolated recently. You need to complete that questionnaire online, and you need to take that with you as well. Finally, the insurance is really important as well. They are required, it's mandatory for everybody joining the ship to have the right level of insurance, and you should check the P&O website for the exact requirements of that to make sure you've got enough in terms of medical cover, and you've got enough in terms of COVID cover as well. And there is a company that P&O partner with where you can get your insurance for. You can do a single trip, or you can do a multi-trip, but there are lots of insurance companies obviously out there that you could pick. Just make sure whichever one you pick does meet the requirements for P&O. The exact details, as I say, is on their website. So just to recap then, I know I've said this a number of times: your e-ticket and your boarding pass, proof of vaccination, your insurance, your passport, your luggage, and hopefully with a smile on your face, you're ready to go. What happens then when you arrive at the dock? Well, there's two ways this can work. You either turn up in your car and use one of the car companies that takes your car away from you. The first thing you need to do, you get driven to, or you get directed to a place where it's a drive-through testing centre. So before you can go and check in, before you're allowed to let your car go, you need to go through to the drive-through testing area in order to get tested, and then obviously await your result. If you're a foot passenger, so you've been dropped off by somebody, or you arrived by public transport, then you will be directed to walk into the testing centre around the outside of the ocean terminal into the Mayflower. And the testing is done using the lateral flow test. So you may be familiar with this from what you've been doing at home, or perhaps you've been doing it in the workplace. P&O require you to have a lateral flow test, and clearly you need to be negative before you're allowed to go on board, or even before you start the check-in process. The lateral flow test at P&O is done via nasal swab, and it's done in each nostril. It's not very invasive. I had it done obviously myself last Sunday just before I boarded Britannia, and it's very, very easy. So what happens? You walk through the door. You're first of all asked to show your passport for identification. Then you're asked to show your vaccination proof, and as I said, don't forget you need to show official proof of your vaccination course from a local health authority, either via the NHS app, for example, or by downloading a PDF and printing it, or by having a letter sent to you from the NHS. Once you've shown that, you're then directed to another desk where they verify your telephone number with you, and they give you a wristband. And that wristband is important because it's the way in which you can proceed to the next part of the check-in process. But what happens is you get the wristband, they check your mobile number, and almost straight away, it certainly happened to me, you'll receive a text message confirming you've been registered on the system. And then you're directed to a member of the medical team that are dressed up in protective outfits. They will then proceed to ask you to move your head just slightly so they can take a nasal swab in each of your nostrils. As I said, not very invasive. And then they'll complete the lateral flow test. But while they do that, you're asked obviously to carry on and then to move back outside that building that you've just entered, back to the ocean terminal where the check-in process will continue. And then fingers crossed, within a few minutes, and for me it was probably only 5-6 minutes or so, you receive the text message to say that you are negative, and of course your staycation can really begin at that point. Now you've come back into the ocean terminal having got your white wristband around your wrist. Hopefully you'll have a text message to say that you're negative. You may not have received that yet, but don't worry, you can continue up to effectively the pre-screening process where you're asked to confirm that you've had insurance sorted, and you're asked another number of health declaration questions in relation to COVID symptoms or any isolation that you've been doing recently, the sort of thing you keep getting asked when you go to the doctor at the moment or the dentist before you're allowed to do anything. It's a standard set of questions, and then eventually you are invited to officially check in, and hopefully, as I say, by now you'd have received that really magical text message that says congratulations, your test is negative for COVID, and so they'll proceed to check your passport, check your boarding pass, and then you are directed through security in the normal fashion, and eventually you will be welcomed on board the ship that you've arrived on, which of course at the moment will be Britannia, until the second ship that's doing staycations, Iona, is launched in August of this year. I can't tell you how excited I was to finally be on the air bridge, being taken through to the door, and obviously passing over my boarding pass and be welcomed officially back onto the wonderful ship that is Britannia. But the changes that you would expect don't stop there. The first thing you do is directed to go to your muster station, and you're told on your e-ticket your cabin number and your boarding pass, what your cabin number is and what your muster station letter is, and there are lots of signage around the decks, and of course the crew are there to help you as well, to send you to your muster station. When you get to the muster station, the officer there at the door will scan your boarding pass again, which just verifies that you have visited your muster station, so you know where it is. Because of course, before these staycations happened, before COVID, at some point during the afternoon on the first day, we'd all be invited to go into the muster station. We'd listen to an announcement from the captain. We'd be invited to put on our life jackets, and we'd get accustomed to the muster station. But because it's a staycation and because of COVID, you're invited just to know where it is. And then the officer that scans your boarding pass will then direct you to your cabin, ask you to head in that direction, and invite you to watch the safety video, which is showing on all the TVs in the cabins. If you're using the lift, and they do ask you to reserve those lifts for those of us with mobility issues, but inside the lift, one of the other changes you might notice is there are footprints in the lift, and it says that there are no more than 4 people, slightly larger if you're a family bubble, but no more than 4 people in the lift, and supposedly you're supposed to stand where the footprints are. When you arrive at your cabin door, there'll be a seal on the door, which just proves that you were the first person in there since it's been signed off and cleaned. So there'll be a seal on the door, and inside the sort of post box next to the door with your cabin number on it will be an envelope which will be sealed, and inside that envelope, of course, is your cruise card, which not only lets you inside your cabin, but of course you'll use throughout the ship in order to pay for things that you purchase. And another new change on P&O is that those cruise cards are now contactless. So rather than handing them over to the bar staff who swipe them or might make a note of the details on them, they can actually use their handheld devices now to use the contactless technology and just tap or you're invited to tap their handheld device in order to place your order, which is really, really good. But what other changes can you expect to see on the ship? Well, as you can see in lots of restaurants and lots of public places right now, there's lots of arrows on the floor so you can see in which direction you're supposed to be travelling. It's very easy to see. They're very clear, very loud blue arrows on the floor that you can follow, and lots of signage around as well. Of course, and I should have said it before, face covering is a mandatory requirement. There are no exemptions on P&O at all, so you need to make sure you're able to wear a face covering. And I should also say they're not accepting the face visors either. You need to wear a fully covering face mask, of course, over the nose and over the mouth, anywhere you are, unless you're outside, unless you're in your own cabin, or unless you're eating and drinking, which also includes the casino. If you follow my blog, you'll know that I love going into the casino. Providing you are drinking, then you don't have to wear a face mask on the slot or at the tables, but of course if you're not drinking, you need to be wearing a face mask. The other changes that you'll see is you're asked to access an online app via the web, which is free of charge. You don't have to buy a Wi-Fi package for that. It's the only thing you can access via the Wi-Fi without paying for it, which allows you to queue up to go to dinner. It allows you to make bookings for lunch. It allows you to make bookings for select dining events. And also you can check your diary if you've booked things before you've gone onto the ship as well. Maybe I'll make another video about that in due course, but I really wanted this video to focus on the process of what you need to do before you leave, the process of what happens in relation to testing, and then what happens when you first go onto the ship, so that you can enjoy, as I did last week, a really fantastic P&O Cruises holiday, something that of course has been well overdue.